Hey Ryan, question for you.
Yeah, Daniel, what's up?
If, and this is a big if, you
Okay.
were a professional wrestler,
Okay.
what would what would you choose for an entrance song?
That's a good question. Yeah, so off the top of my head, I would probably say Megalovania.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're not a gamer, you probably haven't heard of this song before. It's part of a game. It's a song in a game called Undertale, and on the internet, it's widely known as like a meme song. But
Uh-huh.
it rocks. This song is so good. I'll listen to it at the gym or at the CrossFit gym or whatever. Like whenever I'm working out, just because it pumps me up so hard. It's so good. If you haven't heard it before, y'all out there need to go and listen to it right now.
It's so good.
It's a bop.
It is a certified banger. And also, while you're listening to this, it's probably not going to be too hard to find my song, my personal choice. If I was a professional wrestler, because clearly I have the physique of
Oh
a
yeah,
professional wrestler.
yeah.
It's a career path I'm moving towards.
Just a couple meat sandwiches, maybe a few steroids. You'll be right there.
I'll be right there, and just a lot of body oil. Uh,
Oh man, thanks for that picture.
Gross. No, so the choice that my song would be, it will be is no surprise to listeners of the podcast. I love a good meme. I love a good meme song.
Oh yeah.
And so the option I'm going with is All Star by Smash Mouth,
Let's go.
but specifically the heavy metal version.
Oh
Um,
man.
which if you haven't heard it, just Google like Smash Mouth or All Star Butt Metal. And there's this guy who does like a video on YouTube, and it is a headbanger.
It's one of
Like
the
it
few
rocks
songs.
so hard.
It's one of the few songs I have downloaded onto my phone, um, just to listen to. It's so good. So
Yeah.
we both would choose meme songs. Is what we're coming up with here.
Which again, I think listeners of this podcast, that's no surprise to
Oh
them.
yeah, for sure. But I can kind of picture. So personally, I can kind of picture myself in like that old timey boxer, sort of like where they had the pants hiked up real high, and
Yes.
they were going bare fisticuffs, like
Uh-huh.
I say, boy, I say, or whatever they say, and they were in the ring.
And they just have the ridiculous mustache that's like a foot wide.
I don't know why I went with foghorn leghorn there, but I did. It's something that happened, and we all let it happen.
We're all responsible now.
You all were part of this. You didn't stop me. Goodness gracious.
The
All
aiding
right,
and
moving
abetting.
on. So what do we have on the docket today?
Yes. Well, first of all, listeners, it's been a long time. Welcome back to the Assemblymen,
It
where,
has been a long time.
in case you've forgotten, here at the Assemblymen, our tagline, it's okay to ask for directions. Purpose for this podcast, we made it back after a long hiatus, is personal development. Each week, our goal is to highlight one virtue of outstanding individuals for us to cultivate in our own lives. So,
Mhm.
Ryan, what is the virtue that we are going to be highlighting in this, our first episode back?
Well, ironically, our theme today, we're going to be talking about perseverance. What do you think of when you think of perseverance, Daniel?
Ryan, I think of us trying to record this episode.
Let's go. Do you want to tell the story behind that?
Okay. Well, which story? Because it happened like 7 times.
Yeah. Well, how about the original? Way
Okay.
back in what was it, June?
I've lost
No,
track. There's
May?
no possible way I could know that
Oh my
information
word.
anymore. So last year, Ryan and you and I started this podcast up, kind of this rebranded version of the Assemblyman Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And things were going great. And then we recorded an episode that shall forever be referred to as the lost episode.
Yes, it was a good one too.
It was so good. We had a guest on who was very knowledgeable, who told us about a great historical figure.
Ida B. Wells, to be specific.
Yeah. So we're not going to talk about Ida B. Wells
Not
because
today.
she's part of that lost episode. And we talked about perseverance. And
Everything was lost.
everything vanished. It was stolen by the computer gods.
My heart was stabbed out of my chest.
And And then life happened. And now, like 8-9 months later, we tried to record again, and we tried like 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had technical difficulties. So we had to push through those. After months of being like, we should start this back up. We should do this. We're like, yeah, let's do it. And then technical difficulties. And then last week we were going to record, but something came up and we weren't able to.
Yes.
And then 2 weeks ago, or no, last week, 2 weeks ago, something came up. Last week, I took a nap and fell asleep, and we missed the recording. And so here we're back.
Wow.
When I think of perseverance, the journey of this podcast is the first thing that comes to mind.
This is an obvious thing to point out, but I just find it hilarious, right? That last year was the perfect time to have a podcast because everybody was shut indoors for the longest time.
They needed something to do.
Yeah. And that was the one time we decided just like, we can't do it, man. We're done.
Can't happen.
It can't happen. And now that things are starting to look like they're headed back towards normalcy, we're just like, this is the time. This is it. We're going to start now when nobody's too home anymore, right, and everybody's too busy.
Right. So if there's one thing you can take from us, it is not our sense of timing, but at least you can rest secure knowing that we are not just trend chasers.
Correct. Yes.
We run away from the trend.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're like
in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
That's us.
Oh yeah.
So kind of to tie into that, usually we would do a look at this guy, but we've actually got a different segment, a different way of talking. We have a different layout
for the entire show now.
And it's not just because we forgot how to do the old way.
That's a good clarification.
But we do have a new segment to kind of talk about the theme of perseverance. Mm-hmm. The first inaugural edition of a policy check.
Policy check.
All right. So today's policy that we're going to be talking about is goal setting.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of New Year's resolutions?
Once or twice.
Once or twice, yeah. You hear about them a couple times, especially around, January when New Year's happens. How many times do you hear about them after January is over?
Yeah, we're recording this now in February,
yeah,
and it's probably been a solid month since I've heard anybody talk about any New Year's resolutions.
Because New Year's resolutions have this stereotype about them that you make them, you start for maybe a week, and then all of a sudden, they're gone. And you just don't do anything with them anymore after that. So we're going to be talking about the difference between a New Year's resolution and actual goal setting today with our talk about perseverance. Do you want to start us off with any New Year's resolutions that you've ever had before? If you can't think of any, I got a couple.
No, I can think of some New Year's resolutions. There was one year that I decided I was going to run every single day.
Okay.
And to my credit, I think I made it at least 3 weeks before giving up on that.
Okay.
Which is about 2 weeks longer than I thought I was going to.
Are we talking like miles or like just a couple meters? Like what are we talking about for runs?
I jogged from my house to my car. No, I think I ran at least a mile every day.
Okay, nice.
During that time. So that wasn't too bad, but it was not a long-term, habit change or anything that I developed. What were some of the New Year's resolutions that you've had, Ryan?
Well, the typical one is losing weight, and we all know how that one goes. I think, every year I gotta say, when it comes to New Year's resolutions, I don't typically do them, but that's because I used to think, maybe I could try it, and I did it for like 3 years, making New Year's resolutions, never followed through, and so I just don't do it anymore. But those couple years, it was like losing weight, and that never happened. In fact, I think I gained weight that year. But there was one in particular in college. I can be a pretty bad procrastinator. when given the opportunity, because I don't know, having pressure on me makes me work harder or something like that. It just makes me better, right?
Right.
That's the mentality, or at least that's what I'm thinking. So I made the resolution that I would get my work done, I don't know, like 3 or 4 days before it was actually due in college. And, you know, for a couple of my classes that worked out for actually the majority of that semester. So like, I don't know, a third of the year. But I did definitely not, I did not do that for all of my classes. Goodness, if I could speak. But yeah, I didn't follow through with most of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you said an interesting thing there too, that I think makes it harder to persevere with something once you have experience failing at setting a goal like that, right? Like once you make the first time you make a New Year's resolution, it's exciting. It's like, oh, this will be, you know, a really easy way to make a change in my life.
Right.
And then, you know, when January turns into February and you've forgotten about it, you're just kind of starting to set this pattern where you have practiced giving up on these resolutions, and so they don't turn into realistic goals or any long-term change.
Right. Yeah.
So I know for me personally, the way that I've found, if I actually want to accomplish something, rather than saying, you know, I'm going to set this as my resolution for the whole year and I'm just going to change, I pick a specific manageable goal that I can, you know, work towards or have as a deadline.
Yeah.
For instance, this year, I decided I'm going to train to run a half marathon. I ran a couple last year and then stopped running in the fall and winter and decided, nope, in May, I'm going to run a half marathon. And so it's not a whole New Year's resolution. I did start it in January, but, you know, it's kind of like 4 to 5 months of here's the deadline. I need to be ready for it by then.
Wow. All right.
So far, that has made me a lot more motivated to do it because it's not just kind of this nebulous, I'm going to change. It is specifically, here's the race. I'm signed up for it. It needs to happen by then.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing with goals for that I have found is if I can section things off and create mini goals within a larger one, it becomes a lot more manageable. When paying off debts, some of the things that are suggested is that you start with the smaller ones, pay off the little debts that you have, and it creates like this snowball effect, and then you can start using the money that would be spent on the smaller debt for the larger stuff. And so if you can like section these things off, it makes it so much more manageable, so much easier to be motivated to do that.
Right.
But one of the things we've been talking about at my church recently is the difference between motivation and dedication. Is motivation is the emotion behind wanting to get something done. Dedication is the discipline to do it even when you don't feel like it. And so goals, New Year's resolutions are very much based on motivation to be better. Is the emotion behind it. It's like, all right, I want to lose weight. I want to feel better. Like I feel like I can start doing this. And then once that feeling wears off, because it's not going to last forever. Once that emotion wears off, if that's all your goals were built off of, the bottom's going to fall out of that thing so fast, and then you're just not going to do it anymore because you weren't actually like dedicated to it. It was just you had the feeling to do it.
Right.
And so having those little goals, it becomes a lot more easy to be dedicated and disciplined to getting those things done. And also, it gives you that boost in your emotions. It's like, you know what, I can do this, and you start feeling like I can do even more. One last thing I'll say on this: I was at the gym yesterday with my wife, and I was watching the timer, as you do, just like when am I going to get done? When am I going to get done? And I had a goal set that I was going to do whatever workout I was doing. For solid 20 minutes. I was going to go as hard as I could and go for 20 minutes. Once that 20 minutes was up, I realized that my miles on the machine was at an odd number, and I was like, you know what, I can round that thing off. And so I then went to the next mile, and then after that was done, I was like, I'm at what was I at 24 and a half minutes or something like that. I was like, I can get to I don't know, I can get to 25. And then after that, I just kept setting smaller goals. And I got to 30 minutes straight of working out really hard. And so I went 10 minutes longer than what I had planned to do. But it was because like in my brain, I was just kind of like, you know what, I can do this. I can do this little thing. I can do this next little thing. And then found out that I did a lot more than what I had intended.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I found too. If you can break that goal down, you oftentimes you build the habit by the time and so as you've achieved those mini goals, then it's just something that you do, right? It's just a natural part of it. So New Year's resolutions, kind of hit and miss because they're usually not specific and they're not consistent enough to really make a change.
Right.
For that.
It's good. It is. I will say before we finish this, it is good to have a final goal in mind. It's not bad to be like, hey, I want to lose weight. But
right.
Like to have that end goal in mind is very important. But yeah, be specific about, okay, how much do you want to lose? Like, how are you going to work out, or what's your eating habits going to look like? And then you break down into the nitty gritty of it all. But yeah, that overall goal, sometimes you just need to be like, you know what, I am going to do this. Like that is an important thing, but don't stop there. There's much more to it.
Exactly. And now a brief recess.
Dad Joke Corner.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah, Daniel.
My friend claims that he accidentally glued himself to his autobiography, but I don't believe him. But that's his story, and he's sticking to it.
Wow. I didn't know where you were going with that one. That's so stupid. Hey, Daniel.
Yeah, Ryan.
So I got an email the other day teaching me how to read maps backwards. Turns out it was just spam.
Oh, no.
Get it? Because maps is spam.
I get it, Ryan.
Anyway,
I get it.
Yeah. This has been Dad Joke Corner.
Preparing you for the future. So in keeping with the rebranded Assemblymen Podcast, coming back from our hiatus, we have not only created new segments, we've also created some new names for some old familiar segments that you know and love.
That is a fact.
We used to have a segment called Here's Why You're Wrong. We loved the idea behind it, but we decided, it's 2021 now. We need to spice things up. We have since rebranded that segment. So now we're going to be coming at you with a new old segment, Motion to Offend.
Motion to offend.
Ryan, what is the statement or the quote that we're going to be reacting to and kind of dissecting here in this segment?
Yeah, so the motion that we have today that is up for scrutiny is the quote or the familiar saying that many of us out there have heard. That goes like this: perseverance is the key to success. If you just persevere, if you just work hard enough, you can make it.
Yeah, well, that sounds totally. Wasn't that what we were just talking about, Ryan? That perseverance is so key, and you have to keep persevering. What's wrong with that?
Yeah,
phrase?
just break down the little goals. Just do those things. You'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
See, it sounds good. A lot of these quotes that we have on the show sound great at first glance. Or sound great? I'm mixing my metaphors. But they seem great at first glance. They sound great when you first hear them. But if you actually think about them, they don't make much sense. So this quote, perseverance is the key to success. It reminds me a lot of a phrase like practice makes perfect, right?
Right.
See, that's not true. Practice doesn't make perfect. No matter what you've heard out there, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. If you practice something incorrectly, you're just training yourself to do it wrong. And no matter how wrong you do it for however long, it's gonna be wrong.
Almost like if you practice making New Year's resolutions and then breaking those New Year's resolutions, just getting really good at breaking New Year's resolutions.
You're setting yourself up for failure, that's for sure. And so perseverance being the key to success, it's not true, because if you are because there is a way to do that wrong. To persevere is not all you need. Sometimes you need talent. Sometimes you need something more than just perseverance. You need the ability to do it correctly.
Right. Yeah. If you imagine the analogy of the even if you have some skill or that, but if you're on a road and you have a destination that you're getting to, if you are walking the wrong direction, you can persevere as much as you want. You are never going to reach your destination until you stop, and turn around and start, correcting and moving in the right direction.
Or if you're stubborn enough to walk around the entire globe. I don't think you want to do that.
That sounds like a waste of time.
Sounds like a waste of time, because it is. It very much is. Perseverance in this case. So like, I know I was saying like sometimes you need talent, right, to make it through some of this stuff. But let's say you're going through a hard time in your life, all right, and you have friends that come alongside you and they start giving you this advice, and it's just like, hey, don't worry, it'll get better. It's like that. I always kind of get a little bit skeptical of that stuff, because it's like, how do you know? What if it doesn't? Like, what if it doesn't get better? And these are just nice platitudes. And so perseverance has a lot to do with the overall philosophy and theology, or like what the things behind it. It's like, why are you persevering? Why are you pushing forward? Because if you're not pushing forward for the right reasons, it's all going to be for nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Perseverance itself is not fun. What, the fulfillment and the attainment that comes when you have persevered, that's the whole reason to persevere.
Right.
And so if you don't have a worldview that believes in, ultimately good triumphs over evil, or that, ultimately, suffering and all of those things end up being worth it, there's not really a reason to persevere.
Right.
Or at least not a good reason that's going to, sustain you, like you said, turn from determination into, from motivation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
were you going to say something? Sorry.
No, I was going to say, perseverance isn't just enough by itself.
Right.
You have to have a reason to persevere, and you have to be, like you said, with practice, doing it in the correct way,
right,
and persevering in the right things.
And one of the things about perseverance that's a little bit rough is we like, as people, we like stories that have closure. You give me a good ending on a story, or at least an ending where I can like imagine something, and there's enough closure for me to say like, that's a memorable story, or that'll stick with me. That's good. Perseverance is hard because like there's not closure there yet. You're pushing through something to get to a place where like you haven't been, and you don't know how it's going to turn out, and so you're just kind of like in this weird like gut turning sort of awkward position. You're just like, I don't like this. I don't really know how to explain it. I can't make people feel how I feel about this. And so when I'm pushing through stuff and I haven't reached the end, it's like, oh, this is gross. I'm not a fan. And so if you're not like, if you are not being led by what is right, by correct wisdom and teachings, like that's how you're always going to be. You're just always going to be in that position because you're never going to reach where you want to reach. And so, and that success that you're looking for, whatever that success is, you're just not going to reach it because it's not based on the truth.
Right. Yeah. And if you keep persevering in the wrong things, that just turns into an exercise in futility. Speaking of futility,
I like where you're going.
We have another new segment for you.
Let's go. So we just made a motion
Yes.
to offend. I would like to introduce you to our next segment to follow that up. Can I have a second?
Can I have a second?
Yes. Can I have a second? So in this segment, previously we've done things like play games or have debates from the annals of history.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a segment where Ryan and I are pitted against each other. This is one where we are nonpartisan. We are coming together to find middle ground and find the truth and establish the truth on a contentious issue that's dividing America right now.
Putting us together on the same side. Oh my word, it's a force to be reckoned with. Let's
Right.
do this thing.
But if we can do it, anyone can do it,
It's,
Ryan.
oh, it's gonna be great. We got this.
So the issue on the table,
Mhm.
what we are trying to determine today is how deep can a pan be before it becomes a pot?
Woo! Getting the hard hitting issues today.
Okay.
I
so
know everybody out there was wondering. Like this is
we
something...
saw the comments.
Oh yeah. the comments from videos 8 months ago. We got to figure these things out. It's for the good of the public. It's for our democracy. We got to know these things.
The world hangs in the balance here. So let's first start out by giving a definition that everyone can agree on. Ryan, what is a pot?
A pot. Yeah. Okay. So a pot, like a cooking pot, it is defined by being deep. Like you got to be able to fit a lot of stuff in there. Like if you're making a stew, if you're making like spaghetti or some sort of pasta dish, especially for a big family, it's got to be deep. And so like I'm going to come out and say like a definitive definition. Like a definitive word on a pot is if I can put it over my head and the edge of it reaches my shoulders, but my head does not touch the bottom of the pot, that's a pot.
Clearly a pot.
Oh, it's clearly a pot. Yeah,
okay.
It's got to be taller than my head is.
Yes, I would agree with that.
In there, right?
That's definitely a pot.
Yeah.
Now, if we go to the other end of the spectrum, things that are definitely pans, or the definition of a pan. So a pan, you talked about, a pot is defined by how deep it is. I would say we can all agree a pan is defined by how wide it is.
Yeah, okay.
A pan is a wider object. It has a lip or an edge to it, but the thing that makes it a pan is how wide it is. When you think of something like, a classic example would be a cast iron skillet. Right. It is something that you can, it has a handle, but it's nice and wide. You know, it's usually wider than like the stove burner that you're putting it on.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed that way to kind of evenly distribute heat, and give you the most cooking area possible for whatever you're cooking in that pot. A pan is usually not designed to hold liquid. It is more designed to hold food stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, you can put liquid in a pan, but that's not its primary function.
Yeah. And I think another thing is that, like, when it comes to pans and pots, something that is very important for the definition is the shape of it.
Yes.
Because so at the house here, we have a like a stir fry pan,
like a wok,
dish?
A wok thing. Yeah.
But that's like it's rounded off, but it's not a cylinder. It doesn't go straight down.
Correct.
Right? And so like that wouldn't be considered a pan, would it? Like that rounded section? Because a pan is more like a cylinder. Or, I mean, sorry, a pot.
A pot. You're right.
Sorry, a pot.
Say, yes. Yeah, because like a wok, which is, it's got a very narrow base, but then it kind of like slants up at an angle all around it. And it has like the traditional pan handle, which is the a longer handle, not like the ones that are really close to the edge.
But that's closer to a pot.
It is closer to a pot, but I think you've hit on the common ground there. I think the thing that we can agree on is a pot is a cylinder shape. It doesn't have a sloping edge to it. It has a straight up and down, edge to it.
Yeah. So I think what we're looking for is measurement then, specifically like what length does it have to be, or what height does it have to be? Because if we know the shape, the only thing that can change at that point is the height at which it is.
Correct.
So a pan has to be a specific height for it to be considered a pot.
Yes.
What is height? What is that?
Well, I think it's a ratio, because it depends on how wide it is.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Right? Because I'm thinking we had a we had a pan growing up. There was definitely a pan, but it had like a straight edge to it. But it was probably like maybe a 2.5 inch side, but it was like a probably 7-inch pan, right? So it was clearly much wider than it was tall, and it wouldn't have been a good pot. So I think the point at which my first definition would be the point at which it becomes a pot is the point at which it's definitely a pot if it's as tall as it is wide.
Oh. Okay.
Is it a pot if it is half as tall as it is wide?
Okay, so let's think about this. Let's say we have a 4-inch tall pot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just 4 inches tall. So you take
roughly that.
You said that your pan had a 2-inch tall edge to it, right?
Right. Yeah, somewhere in there.
So, but you called it a pan.
Because it was definitely a pan.
Okay, so I don't think we can necessarily say that if you pot, let's say you have a 4-inch tall thing, would you consider that to be a pot?
Now, unless it was really, really like narrow, I would say no.
Because I don't think that's a pan either. Because you can fit a lot more stuff in there than just like a regular pan would. Like I wouldn't use a 4-inch tall pan for like pancakes.
No. Yeah, because the other thing is with a pan, you have to be able to get a spatula in there.
Yeah, exactly.
And once you get to 4 inches, or maybe like 3 to 4 inches, you can't get the spatula in.
I think we're narrowing
right
it
angle.
down. I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there. I think so. Depending on the size of this like pot looking thing, I think I have a definition.
Okay.
If you have one of those smaller like stovetop looking like little handled pot
stovetop
things,
burner.
Yeah. If you're able to pour an entire can of chunky soup inside one of the smaller ones and it fits and it doesn't like overflow, I think that's a mini pot. I think that's what that is. And so anything bigger than that, I'm gonna put my stamp on it and say a pot starts at about 3 1/4 to 3.5 inches.
I was gonna say I think 3 is the cutoff. I think if it's 3 or less, if it's wide enough, I think it can be a pan.
Okay.
If it's more than 3, I think it has become a pot.
Perfect. We have reached our definition. And so, ladies and gentlemen out there in Radio Land, feel free to message us and tell us why we're wrong.
We're not.
But we'll have fun laughing at your opinions.
Right.
No.
Or you can message us and tell us how great a job we just did and how you have future or hope in the future of America because of how Ryan and I were able to come together.
We're so unified. It's wonderful. And so speaking of where people could write to us, where would we do that?
That's a great question, Ryan. It's been so long, I've completely forgotten. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Assemblymen Podcast. We appreciate your perseverance in sticking with us after so many months.
You guys rock.
You are the greatest. You can find our episodes on YouTube, on Podbean, or on SoundCloud. Just have to search for the Assemblymen Podcast. If you have any feedback, topics that you'd like us to discuss, questions you'd like us to answer, please email us at theassemblymenpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's theassemblymenpodcast@gmail.com, or connect with our Facebook page at facebook.com/theassemblymenpod. We'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation.
Also, if you like what you heard and believe in what we're doing, please leave us a rating or review in the podcast platform of your choice. And if you know anyone else who might enjoy listening, feel free to share us with a friend, and that really helps us grow our audience. And means we get to welcome even more awesome people into the assembly.
Yeah. So, Ryan, what did we learn today?
Well, I think one of the most important things we learned is that a pot starts at about 3 inches off of the stovetop.
That is incredibly important.
I think it's pertinent.
We learned a lot there.
Is that the most important thing we learned today?
Probably the most important thing. And I learned that maps spelled backwards is spam.
That's funny because I was going to say that for my second one. Well, everybody, you can look forward to more Assemblymen Podcast episodes coming out regularly. Every Tuesday, I believe, was our
Sure.
upload schedule. So usually on Tuesdays. If not, we'll send out a message on Facebook or something, and then it'll come out on a Wednesday. It'll be great.
And if you didn't hear from us on Facebook, we probably died. So
But again, yes. So thank you for persevering with us, and we'll see you all next time.
meeting adjourned.